I was working in the emergency room as a registered nurse when this story occurred. I had worked the night before, and they had asked me to stay over a couple hours into the morning shift. I was standing at the charge nurse's desk, talking to her, when all of a sudden the box went off. The box is used so we can communicate to the EMTs out in the field. All of a sudden, we hear one of the EMTs say, "There has been a mass shooting at the mall. We are bringing in several critical patients. We have a man and his 2 kids. Be prepared for a mass influx of people." I look at the charge nurse and say, "Are you fucking serious?" At that point, we all just go into autopilot and get shit done. The EMTs bring in the first round of patients. The first 3 patients were a father and his 2 kids, a boy and a girl. The boy was shot on his left side. The bullet had punctured his lungs, and the girl was shot on the right leg. The bullet barely missed her femoral artery. For those with no medical training, if that bullet nicked her femoral artery, there would have been nothing we could have done for her. She would have bled out. The father had it the worst. He had bullet wounds throughout his entire body. We couldn't figure out why he was shot so many times, but his kids were only shot 1 time each. We later found out that the father and his 2 kids were in the food court, and the gunman was above them, looking down at them. The gunman had opened fire from above, shooting at anybody and everyone below him. When the gunman started shooting, the father had apparently jumped over the table to shield his kids from the bullets. That was why the father had so many bullet wounds, and his kids did not. He took most of the gunfire instead of his kids. Unfortunately, the father didn't make it. It was a very sad day, but I will never forget that this father gave the ultimate sacrifice, his life. Both kids made a full recovery, and we all made sure to tell them that their father was a hero that day.
When I was 19, my boyfriend at the time lived just 3 blocks away from me. I was on 69th and he lived on 66. He would usually drive to my house to pick me up once I got home from work around 9:30 p.m. But this particular night, I insisted that I walk. It took some convincing. I have mace, it's just 3 blocks, it's summer and there's still people out, blah blah blah. But he finally agreed. My mom would always tell me if I'm walking alone at night to walk in the street, so that's what I did. I had my pepper spray in my hand, ready to be sprayed, and my keys between my fingers, ready to gouge an eye out if need be. All is fine. I get to the 66th Street, and I put on my cell phone to call my friend. He doesn't answer. No big deal, I turn down the street that his house is on and instantly get a bad vibe. Yes, it's late, but as I mentioned before, it's summer and people are usually out. His street was eerily quiet and desolate. Then I notice an older man walking on the same side of the street as me, in my direction. I don't know what it was about, but my heart started pounding when I saw him. We were both about the same distance from my boyfriend's house, so I quickened my step to make it there first. He's in front of the neighbor's house when I run up to my boyfriend's steps, and I can hear him mumbling strange things. He was talking to someone about the pretty girl they just saw and how she would be a good one. I wanted to piss my pants. I am banging on my boyfriend's door and ringing the doorbell nonstop, and nobody is answering. I'm calling his cell phone back and back, but still no answer. The man walks by the house and I can see him stop, right before the next house. He starts walking backwards until he gets to the front step of my boyfriend's house and stops to look at me. I try not to look scared like a little girl, and I calmly say, "Can I help you, sir?" I shit you not. He gave me the creepiest smile and slowly started up the stairs towards me, all the while mumbling things that I couldn't understand. The layout of the front house is 4 steps, a landing that leads onto the patio, and 5 more steps to the landing to the front door. I say, "Don't make me mace you, old man." I laugh thinking about it now, but nope, that didn't stop him. He kept that creepy smile and mumbling, and he's on the first landing now. I'm holding my mace, watching him and almost kicking my boyfriend's door in when, by chance, I try the knob and thank whoever is watching over me that it was unlocked. I rushed in and locked the door. I go to run to my boyfriend's room and he's coming down the stairs saying he fell asleep. Meanwhile, I'm going ballistic about this creepy old man and how neglectful it was for him to leave me outside at this hour. I know, I insisted. Not to mention he was upstairs asleep with the front door unlocked. At night. Anyway, he goes outside and the old man is nowhere to be found. So, mumbling old man, let's not meet.
This is my first post to Reddit, and may possibly be my last. I have never really told anyone this story, not even my parents or my wife. It happened when I was 13 years old, so some of the details are a little sketchy. I have only ever told variations of the story in fear of telling the exact truth, so this will be the first time it comes out legit. When I was 13, my friend and I had a terrible scare one night when my parents went out with some friends. My friend Jesse and I were your typical nerdy 13-year-old boys who felt more inclined to play with action figures and watching movies rather than calling girls and playing catch out in the yard. Jesse is the one friend you have growing up where we were best friends from beginning to end. We hardly see each other anymore, but we have that bond where when we do see each other, it's like no time was ever spent apart. It was a typical evening for us, playing action figures, talking Star Wars, playing Star Wars Battlefront 2 way too much. My parents were going out to eat with some friends, so they ordered some Chinese food for Jesse and I. It must have been November-ish because it was cold out and dark rather early in Michigan. My parents left around 5-ish, and we spent a couple hours goofing off. Around 7, we decided to eat our Chinese food. My parents' house is situated out in the country. This will be important later. Their house is one of those 80s tri-level homes, so every floor is broken up. The house basically has 1.5 basements. We were sitting in the dining room, where the south wall is basically one big glass sliding door. Jesse sat with his back towards the door, and I sat facing it across from him. We were eating our food, not really talking, when I think I hear 2 men speaking in our backyard. Now this is kind of key here. It's pitch black outside, so when I would glance out, looking over Jesse's shoulder, I could see only my reflection, nothing else. You know those moments where you think you hear or see something, but you never tell the other person you're with because they never made any type of reaction to it, so you assume it was your imagination. Well, it was like that. But now, after confirming with Jesse some 10 years later, he was doing the same thing I was to him. I glanced at Jesse a couple of times to see if he had ever made any type of indication, hearing these men talking faintly in the background, but he didn't. Getting nervous, I half laughed and made the joke that I thought I heard talking outside. Jesse replied that he heard it too. Now at this point, some alarm should have went off because the property is fenced in completely by a chain-linked fence. We had 2 dogs and lived out in the middle of nowhere, so it was mega unlikely anyone would be inside the fence on our property. Just as we were about to brush off the comments we made about the 2 men talking, we heard the sentence that I can still clearly hear in my head to this day. They are in there. We both stopped eating at the same time. We looked at each other with horror and knew that this was not our imagination. Again, the same male voice said, "They are in there." But then he added, "Where are the dogs?" At this point, we knew this shit was real. Then we heard, "Check the doors." We quickly jumped up and shut off all the lights in the house, still not sure if that was smart or dumb, and ran downstairs. We hid in one of my mother's closets, filled with old clothes never used. The closet was large enough that we could hide deep in there, and we wouldn't be seen immediately. We hid there for a couple minutes listening, or at least it felt like a couple of minutes. But then, it got worse. Way worse. As we started to listen, we could hear them knocking on the windows. Then we heard pounding on the doors. We looked through the crack in the closet door and saw two guys standing outside the window. Only, we could just see their legs, because we were in the pseudo-basement part of the house. All the lights were off, but we could still hear them and see them relatively well. The one guy got onto his knees and looked into the window and started licking it. He kept saying he was hungry. One of the men had said, "I know they heard us," because they shut off all the lights and ran. We were so afraid, but we kept really quiet, just wondering if they were going to try to come into the house. He tried to open the window and couldn't, so he began to punch the window frame, which made the whole house shake. I was freaking out because I had no idea where my dogs were at, how long it would take my parents to get home, and that there was no way of reaching our landline to call for help. We were trapped, and they knew we were hiding from them. One guy walked off, and we could hear pounding on the glass door. I was sure they were going to find a way inside. It was only a matter of time. All of a sudden, we heard the garage door open, and our two dogs, huge German shepherds, tore out of nowhere. We heard one of the guys say, "The dogs are out! The dogs are out now!" The jingling of the fence let us know that they had hopped the fence. My parents came walking through the door, wondering why the lights were all off. We had stayed in that closet for 2 hours. Those guys lurked around my house for 2 whole hours. This story is getting way too long at this point, but longer short story, we never told my parents. The dogs were set free once the garage door was open, which had released their dog door that my dad had rigged up to be one queue with the garage door, and what seemed like only a few minutes hiding was really in reality hours long. A few weeks later, our local township sent out a notice to beware of not picking up strangers in our area, that there had been multiple kidnapping attempts. Attempts. Whatever that means. The worst part is, this isn't even the weirdest thing to happen in our small town.
I have a very small family, and at the time, I was fighting with my mom every day. I was a defiant and shithead teenager and wanted out of my small, lame town. My half-sister is older than me, by about 15 years. My dad is much older than my mom and had my sister in his first marriage. So, since my sister is damn near close to my mom's age, she thought it would be a good idea if I went and lived with her for my senior year. I was thrilled. It was a bad time for my sister though, because she was going through a separation with her husband. She didn't want to turn down the opportunity to bond with me though, so we went and lived with a close friend and her husband. They had a huge, beautiful house. This was awesome to me because I came from a very small house, and we were going to be staying with them for a while. I was given my own room. I had my own bed, TV, computer, and etc. It was a nice setup for me, and I was thankful they were so accommodating and gave me my own space and privacy. I was in a new city, so I didn't have many friends yet. I spent a lot of my time in my room browsing the web and being your typical antisocial 17-year-old. I was immediately creeped by the husband. He was a nice dude. He just gave me a bad feeling any time I was around, and he just seemed off. He also had a pedo stash. I was always very wary of older men, so I just brushed off the bad feeling as being dumb and overly paranoid, but I do remember a few notable things about him. First, he was always on his computer. My sister said he kept to himself and played a lot of games and did work, but he would be on all times of the nights. Second, I was wearing some booty shorts one evening before going to bed, and I could tell he was checking me out pretty hard. This made me extremely uncomfortable, but I just put the blame on myself for wearing something revealing. Great mentality, I know. I never wore anything like that around him again. Other than that, he stayed out of my way and we didn't make much contact with each other. He never made any advances at me and never did anything that would be considered creepy or otherwise, weird. Nothing worth bringing up to my sister and her friend. We ended up moving out for a few months because my sister reconciled with her husband, and when I turned 18 and graduated, I went back to live with my mom. Fast forward about 2 years later, I'm visiting with my sister and she's telling me her friend is getting a divorce because she discovered he had a weird porn addiction. Then, she says she has something serious to tell me. Apparently, while the wife was going through his computer and stumbled upon all the porn, she also came up video files of me undressing and whatever else. The husband had placed a video camera in my room and was secretly spying on me and recording everything I did. My sister didn't give me much details because she started bawling and blaming herself for it, and I didn't want to push it. I was in shock. I never had noticed a camera or anything out of the ordinary. I have no idea what it could have been. It all made sense, but it also didn't at the same time. The friend had kicked her husband out of the house and divorced him. It's been another 2 years since I learned of this, and I'm still not sure how to process it. I don't know if he is still the videos or not, but I don't know where he was or what he's doing now. I sometimes feel guilty for not reporting him right away, and I sometimes hate my sister's friend for not reporting him either. He's just out there, and I'll never get closure. The friend doesn't know that my sister told me, and I've never really shared anyone with this until now. It feels good to talk about it. So, creepy douche canoe who placed a camera in my room, you better pray we never meet again.
This happened during my senior year of high school, back in 2007. I was living at my parents' house, who weren't extremely well off, so we didn't have central heat and air. This happened not long before my graduation, so April or May, which meant some nights it was hot outside, so we would regularly open the windows to put a box fan in it. My room was a corner room, so I had 2 windows, one facing the front of the house towards the street, and one facing the side of the house. My bed ran parallel to the side window, with maybe a foot of space between that wall and my bed. The window came to about the middle of my bed. Directly under the window was my outlet. It hadn't been a very warm week, so my box fan wasn't in my window. One night, I was sitting in my bed, working on some report for school. About 30 to 45 minutes into it, I see my laptop battery is low, so I decide to plug it in. I grab the charger out of my bag and lean over to the outlet under the window. As I'm plugging it in, I glance up at the window and see this man staring down at me. I had a brief heart attack and scrambled away from the window, never keeping my eyes off of him. He's just standing there, leaning over and looking straight at me. He looked angry, like I had viciously attacked him on a very personal level. This might be a good time to mention that I didn't even have a screen on my window. I can't speak. I can't move. I can't scream for help. I don't even know if anybody is home. We stay like that for what feels like forever, but may have only been a few seconds. Just frozen, staring at each other. I want to get off my bed and head for the door, but I'm afraid to turn my back to him. Finally, he starts shaking his head and says, "Anyone could crawl through." I don't know why, but the way he had said "crawl through" just sent shivers down my spine. Maybe it was the fact that that was what he chose to say. I imagine him crawling through my window every night without me knowing, and it just filled me with even more horror. I threw myself off my bed and ran for my door and screamed for my brother and my dad while running down the hallway. They came out and I frantically told them what happened, and they ran outside to check around the house but didn't find anything. I moved out not long after graduation, but I will never forget the way he said those words. Anyone could crawl through. Thank you for watching. I always appreciate the support you show me, and I'm forever grateful for it. Hope everyone had a wonderful day. All my social media information is in the description box below. All the story, music, and image information is below as well. And don't forget, I'll see